In the world of giant game companies pushing out half-baked games, it's always nice to know that there's an outcrop of people creating small yet polished games. But it's crazy to think that 10 or even 15 years ago, this wasn't that feasible. With game engines like Unity and Game Maker Studio not being widely available to the public, individual game designers had to have perseverance and determination if they wanted their game to see the light of day. Cave Story is exactly this. A game made by a single person over the course of 5 years. Originally released under the Japanese name Dokutsu Monogatari and the English name Cave Story, this game was made by Daisuke Amaya, also known as Pixel. He started work on the game during college, chipping away at its development over the next 5 years. Originally, he didn't start with any basic gameplay mechanics, instead only working on the title screen music, along with programming some basic player movement. Amaya admitted that his lack of planning led to some problems down the line. Many ideas from his game were inspired by the NES game Metroid. Also, make sure to subscribe if you want to see me talk about the first Metroid game on the NES. This led to his game having a sort of old-fashioned feel reminiscent to many NES games. Along with the nostalgia of the past, another positive for Cave Story was that the game was in 2D, allowing for Amaya to create most of the artwork for the game. Speaking of the art, we should talk about why the game is based around a cave. As Amaya was working on building each level for his game, he decided that a cave setting would be best since most of his levels were made in an enclosed space. After creating his cave world, he started work on his main character, the expressive yet robotic soldier Quote. Quote was also inspired by the famous Italian plumber Mario, who also had a large, expressive face that contrasted well with the background. Another idea that was also inspired by Metroid was the concept of the tutorial level, or lack thereof. Instead, Amaya allowed for the player to go through 2 paths. One of them is blocked by some rocks that can be destroyed if the player traveled through the other path to get a weapon to destroy those rocks. To Amaya, he wanted to give the feeling of exploration to the player, where they are guided by their wits and not directly by the game itself, which seems to be very commonplace nowadays. The need for a tutorial is not as necessary in this game, seeing as the controls are very basic, along with the gameplay loop. With Cave Story being a Metroidvania style game, the player will travel through various caves, navigating through puzzles and killing enemies. Quote can hold multiple weapons, which allows him to kill enemies and gain experience. While moving through the world, Quote may happen upon a health capsule to increase his life, missiles that allow him to shoot deadly rockets at enemies, and items that will help him on his spelunking journey. Speaking of his journey, let's talk about Cave Story's story. The game takes place within the interior of a floating island. Within the island, these large caverns are filled with a race of rabbit-like creatures known as the Mimiga, a species weak to a type of red flower that causes them to rampage when eaten. Along with the Mimiga, an artifact lays within the cavernous world of this floating island, the Demon Crown, which holds an immense amount of power. A robotic military expedition was sent to find the artifact, leading to many robots attacking and killing the Mimiga. Out of desperation, the Mimiga ate the forbidden flower to fight back against this robotic onslaught. In the end, the Mimiga finally won the battle against these robotic enemies, but not without its costs. Many years later, before the game starts, Professor Booster and his assistant, along with the Sakamoto family, formed a research party to find information on the island. But their doctor found the crown and then forced the party to look for the red flower, to create an army of Mimiga to take over the surface world. Once the game starts, Quote, one of the main protagonists, wakes up in a cave with no memory of how he got there. As he delves deeper into the cave system, he uncovers a village of Mimiga where he soon learns that they're being abducted and tested on by the evil doctor. Some of the doctor's servants enter the village trying to find Sue Sakamoto, a girl who was transformed into a Mimiga, but the servants then mistakenly abduct Toroko, an actual Mimiga. The player is then tasked with finding Sue, where he finds her in the egg corridor, as she discovers the egg of a sky dragon, allowing her to escape if she gets caught on the floating island. Sue tries to help her brother, but fails, being captured by the head of the Mimiga village, King, who blames her as the reason why Toroko was kidnapped. Our player is then tasked by Sue to try and find her brother, who is being held up in Grasstown. Once we are freed, we are finally able to meet up with the professor, Professor Booster, who reveals to us the plan hatched by the evil doctor. The doctor plans on using the Mimiga's ability to fall into a fit of rage when eating the forbidden red flower, to amass an army to attack and take over the surface world. Quote is then tasked with destroying the red flower before the doctor can get his grubby little hands on him. As the story goes on, we are given the ability to change the course of the ending. either fleeing on the back of a sky dragon while the Doctor conquers the surface, or to stand and fight against this evil Doctor. The game was released on December 20th, 2004 on Microsoft Windows, with other consoles and systems getting the game ported later on. One of the more important versions of the game is the WiiWare version. Released on March 22nd, 2010, this version of the game was an enhanced port with updates to the character's design, remixed music, and extra game modes. The graphics on this version of the game is the one that has been ported onto other consoles, although some versions have the ability to change back to the old version of graphics. Overall, the game earned widespread recognition for its size, compared to larger games such as Castlevania and Metroid. This game was also important in the world of indie game development. Electronic Gaming Monthly said, "The burgeoning Western indie game scene owes a tremendous debt to Japanese pioneers like Studio Pixel, whose freeware hit Cave Story proved that with sufficient vision, skill, and passion, a single developer can still craft a deep, compelling action game." The success of Cave Story showed that, with a one-man team, it could rival that of major game studios. A single person, over the course of 5 years from college to a job in industry, created such an influential game. Cave Story, with it, Daisuke Amaya, showed what games could be given the time and effort. Had it not been for this game, and many like it, the game industry would not be what it is today. The proliferation of games made by a single person or a small group of people using free software allowed for new ideas to flow. Due to the dedication of Daisuke Pixel Amaya, many individual creators can now make what they imagine come to life on the screen. This has been the history of Cave Story by Daisuke Amaya. If you want to watch a single person create their dream game, click here to watch the history of Minecraft and make sure to hit the like button. Thanks for watching.